Hi, everybody. We are having some technical difficulties tonight. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but
we definitely can.
Whoever's running the hairdryer, please stop.
Doc, I'm going to try something here.
Stand by.
Yeah, Doc, we're getting some interference from your end.
I got Bluetooth going on the head. Usually it's the other. I don't think there's anything running here.
Help, my channel is under attack.
There's a humidifier in the next room. That's the only thing. Everything else here is. We took all the boys out. They wanted to go to the bar with their buddies tonight, so they asked my wife to drive them in.
Concern.
Are we going to have to do a text-to-speech scene?
It almost sounds like an old modem.
Well, it sounds like Nicolas Cage is trying to drill into the actual fiber optic cables so that he can steal the digital Declaration of Independence. Like he's going after that NFT, man.
This is what happened when they got rid of net neutrality.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh God, that's worse. That's so much worse.
I had to mute you for a second, Doc. Can you try without the headphones?
I like the interpretive dance idea.
Scooby-Dooby-Doo, system settings.
We can hear you right now.
Yeah. That seems to have ended it. No, talk too soon.
We had a good thing going there, Pete, and then you ruined it.
Let me see if it was one. Is that a? What's that do for the world?
Gives us an extra second and a half.
I didn't. You're still getting some kind of background noise?
Yeah, well, it's not background noise. It's static.
It's like.
Well, let's see here. Let's just. All right, I went to the MacBook.
Yeah, that is definitely not background noise. That is foreground noise.
That is.
There?
Doc, can you not hear that?
I've got.
Sorry, folks. We don't usually have these kind of problems. Is your headset still paired, Doc? If your headset,
my earbud Bluetooth and speakers.
Why is he in slow motion? What is happening?
That look of frustration, though, just shows it perfectly.
Tell you what, Doc, why don't you back up and try to get you again?
You're breaking up.
He's melting. I don't know what's happening.
So is this in my mind? Like, Pete, are you playing co-op on Space Marine 2? Are you hearing the same thing or something else?
I'm hearing the same thing, but
Okay.
Yeah, Doc, you went from having the intermittent screeching to I'm talking like this, and it's all distorted. I have no idea what's causing this. Other than, are you in some kind of vortex? Are you being sucked into hyperspace?
In my voice now.
Wow.
This is like the fever dream scene in a movie where like it's like, oh no, the Navy SEAL tumor is acting up.
Are you hearing me? 1, 2.
We're hearing you, but it's very slow and robotic, like Megatron on mescaline.
we're hearing it.
My microphone is phone. That's no.
Can you kind of back out and rejoin, Doc?
Done is I've X and I'm just speakers and microphone. So what I got that right now.
You're gonna laugh when you see this on the replay.
I need
feedback. Oh, this thing sucks.
Back, I don't know.
Maybe try exiting the screen and coming back in.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Wait, when he comes back, we need to all talk like this so that he thinks like, hey, Doc, how is it? Oh man, it's a shame it's winter. I should have like a fan that I can speak into.
Okay, here we go. Let's try it.
What you got, Holmes?
Oh my God.
So far, we're good.
Okay, well, when we'll just go low speed, and I'll just use the MacBook speaker and microphone if that's working.
It's working.
Good enough.
Now we can get into the meat of this stream, which is nothing.
Yeah, exactly. A show about
yeah.
Tableau's got it right. Sun's up, calms down.
Oh, man, dude, can you imagine if like Apple made all the comms instead of like Harris or 3M?
I honestly don't know if that would be better or worse.
Yeah, I imagine it would be worse because like you'd be in a firefight, you'd be like, I'm in a tick, I need help, and then it's like, boop, you need to update this app before you can.
Yeah. No. Given how fast an iPhone tends to drop cell signal too, yeah, it'd be bad.
Your firefight is out of our coverage.
That's why you shouldn't go to war with T-Mobile. Trust me.
You want to know what the real Illuminati is?
No, I got some stories, but they're not for public consumption. So, Doc, for those who have not met you before,
why are you a robot?
Yeah, how does that work?
Yes, the sound you are hearing is not service connected.
It's like my tinnitus took a real turn for the worse there at the end.
Oh yeah, that was something beyond tinnitus, I think. That was tinnitus plus TBI.
Yeah.
He was doing the robot voice. It was like in the first Star Trek movie where they went into the wormhole and they put it in super slow motion for some reason. Because Roddenberry thought that was really epic. And yeah, it was like a drawn out slow-mo robot voice.
Yeah,
You
that's
remember more of that
it's
movie
like
than I
the
do.
fever dream scene in something where it's like everything gets all slow and you're just like, what happened? Except there's like an added layer of like, you know, like the Matrix glitched or something. So Doc, how are you?
Life is good. Life is good. Glad to see everybody. Been a little while.
Yeah, it's good to have you back.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
been a busy last few months, just running around doing plenty of advising and teaching and contracting, and wrapped up a nice package down at Fort Moore for Warriors Training Center. They bring me down 2 or 3 times a year to work with their sniper teams going out to domestic and international competition. So I had a great bunch who were just all at Fort Chaffee last week for the WPW Sniper Comp. And I couldn't be there with them because it was my annual migration into the mountains for my own week of extended long range shooting and long range deer assassination, and it was super successful on all counts. And
so you didn't just quit the
everybody getting ready for Christmas.
That's good to hear.
So how much is this? Go ahead. So how much are the snipers all computerized now, and how much are they still learning all the old school stuff? The milling things out for range and gathering
I thought
data.
Crack about his robot voice earlier.
We got to get past that. We got to move on. I mean, it's all from the ground up. It's just what we can do now. With using our Kestrel 5700 and applied ballistics, that alone right there gives us capabilities, beyond what we've been able to do at any point in history. And now that technology like our weapon-mounted laser rangefinders, are just standard equipment, as long as you're not worried about emissions, your ability to run the gun without taking your face out of the optic to do anything has never been better. Like running through a target engagement sequence, without ever taking your face out of the gun. It's never been faster. It's never been more accurate. I mean, using that same setup is like last week. I got one of my best ever, but I got a 2,040 yard first round hit on a cold bore gun.
Damn.
Nice. So it's like I say, edging a mile and a half with what is really just, not a dedicated ELR setup, but just a very, obviously high end system, but, nothing dedicated for like, King of 2 miles sort of competition or anything else like that. So believe me, all the guys out there, they know everything from the ground up, the hard way, like we learned way back when. But what we've jumped into technology wise, and especially it's just the ballistic computations through our Kestrel. It's night and day difference. It just gives guys capabilities that we would have only have dreamed of, even 15 years ago.
So what you're telling me is there's still a gun like that hasn't been rendered obsolete by drones, right? Because they render everything obsolete, even like every advanced stealth fighter in the past, 2 decades.
Or every weapon system, period.
Yeah. Why even have aircraft carriers?
Just gonna have drones. Just drone.
Well, the truth is, and like what the It's interesting. I was at Maneuver Warfighter Symposium in September down at Moore, aka Benning. And I mean about quarter of the vendors were all drone technology vendors, and it's pretty rad to walk in and the main display, walking into the main hall is one of those drones like the size of a one of the new Ford Broncos that's boasting a javelin on top of it. That's pretty badass.
OJ definitely would have gotten away if he was on a drone that size.
Yes, if he'd have been riding a drone and been able to launch javelins at the LA County Sheriff's Department, he would have gotten away.
That would have been police brutality right there.
Yes.
The big thing, not to dive off into that topic, but the big thing is, Justin, like what I do a lot with the guys, and it gets in, everybody still has to have all those old school, stalking skills and, able to do things like, just, milling targets and trying to come up with a range based on estimated size of the target and things like that, to avoid emissions. But, 2 years of Ukraine have proven that all of that is very anachronistic thinking, right? That the proliferation of drone and IR technology and IR sensing technology, the mired in the 60s and 70s idea of Carlos Hathcock, stalking, for 3 days to go assassinate the NBA general. If the NBA has, a $2,000 drone with the IR capability of a Ring doorbell, there's no hiding anymore. And in fact, at International Sniper Comp last year, they used IR drones on everybody in the stock, which it's like the SWIC guys, the Range 37 guys just got up and started whipping rocks at them, because, it's so unfair. I mean, so we've always had that experience that with FLIR, if you have aviation assets hunting you who have FLIR, there is no hiding on the battlefield. You're fucked. That's just all there is to it. But 15, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, where that technology was still so expensive and it was truly, we had no peer. Now that technology is so proliferative, it is so cheap. It's the same thing with domestic law enforcement with the people I work at. I mean, for the last 10 years, it's like, say, everybody's got Google Nest cameras that are all IR, which means that if you're using your multifunction aiming lasers on your assaulter carbines to loop a door or, identify something on the second story or doing something else like that, you've compromised everybody because they see your, invisible IR. Now it's even worse. It's like when guys, serve a search warrant or an arrest warrant with a search warrant on a site, and you're pulling out guys. They all have, iRay, thermals on their ARs, just like a predator hunter would. Like I say, they have full, IR capability on cameras and stuff like that around there. So it's really, we're back to we own the night. Yeah, the bad guys own the night too now, and it's everywhere.
I, for one, am glad we spent 20 years going through a lot of trouble to get camouflage uniforms that everybody was happy with. That really worked out. That was important.
Yeah.
Well,
my favorite part.
I think what Mike is getting at is there is no reason not to return to Tricolor Woodland. Just everybody hop back on the Lord's flannel.
I laughed so much when I saw the Ukrainians and the Russians wearing red and blue armbands to paintballers so they could tell each other apart, because they're all. I mean, the Ukrainians have their own ACU kind of looking camo pattern, and the Russians wear fucking whatever. They wear multicam, they wear ATACs, they wear just if everybody in the world uses multicam now too. So it's like
We were giving multicam to the Kurds and the Iraqis at one point.
Look, I just want to see them go back to like the beret style, I'm in charge, fucking warlord shit, where it's like it's not about the camo, it's about like the pieces of flair that you can throw on there to show that even though you're a 13-year-old hopped up on meth, you're still in charge of this unit. Like
The shoulder boards with the braid.
yeah. Just look at whatever sub-Saharan Africa is doing, and just be like, yeah, they get it. They get it.
Pretty rad. Pretty rad. Yes,
Because now it's a war of personality, not of stealth, but of like instead of trying to blend in and be unseen and hidden on the battlefield, now you want to be seen because you want to like build morale and show that you're the top dog.
Be the dude with the panache.
Yeah,
totally out there.
We need to go back to like
coat
coats of arms. You know what I mean? Like where like you have your heraldic sigil showing like what your unit is.
And then the guy who's buried back,
as it were.
And then the guy who's buried back in a half-collapsed building with overhead cover smokes you anyway.
No, because drones have rendered that obsolete.
Yeah.
Well, it is super interesting right now, and certainly the shit show that's going on over there. At a minimum, what's been taken away is that with this really cheap drone technology and the improvisation that the Ukrainians have used, it's in a very in the best of asymmetric ways, you can bring a very very heavy cost to the enemy without depleting your own expensive resources. So why be burning $1 million javelins when you can like launch that $500 first person viewer drone, with a grenade attached to it and drive it right into the TC compartment.
Right.
But
apparently, the other question also is like, all right, the cheaper it is, the easier it is to come up with an electronic countermeasure to it. And so
I have to wonder, like the Russians, they can't be running any kind of ECM, like any at all, if these commercial drones are being this effective. It's like even the shit we had in Afghanistan, over a decade ago would easily shut down cell phones and any kind of commercial transmitter. So it's like, what?
Damn it. The Thor system is back. I thought we were done with that shit.
You don't want to be the guy sitting in the back right-hand seat too close to that antenna.
Oh. Yeah, I hope you weren't planning on having kids.
It's true. I don't know why it seems to be so limited. It may not be as far as, domestic evenly before we were looking at, anti-drone systems. I mean, just you guys probably don't know what a Stingray is. Did I just give a word? But, being able to block cell phone signals and things like that with that technology, that's not a huge leap to be able to block the RF frequencies.
Right.
The drones are controlled on. So yes, Mike, I'm with you. I find it very interesting that for all of the other technology that the Chinese have fed to the Russians, why their ECM capability isn't up higher than it should be, given what they're facing.
The other thing is, and not to get too far into the details on this, but if you have a sophisticated enough programmer back at base that has access to these drones and that, before you send them out, you can have a sort of contingent protocol that goes when RF signal gets lost, where it'll switch over to GPS pre-programmed routes and that stuff. The thing is, once you do that, it stops being a $500 drone. Now it's a little bit more expensive, and you have to do a shitload of recon to determine what those routes are going to be and what those follow-on actions are going to be. Because now you're going from a piloted FPV to fire and forget, automatic probe and that stuff. So
and the accuracy level drops way off with what you can do with those small systems.
And so once you do that, that is a possibility, and a lot of people that we don't like do have those capabilities, but to get the assets in place to so that what you need to program into that, all that other stuff costs a lot more money than just that $500 Mavic or whatever you're flying. So
point made in the comments is some of the drones are being run off of cables, and yeah, I've seen footage of wire guided drones where it's got like a 5 kilometer spool of speaker wire coming off the back of it, and you control it through that.
So
that's
basically,
we just factor in of itself,
we just really slowed down the tow missile.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the thing with all of this craze about drones right now. I don't know how much you've seen of it, Doc, but Elon Musk has basically trying to declare that drones have rendered every other weapon system obsolete. So we need to cancel all the rest of the defense budget and just throw everything into drones now. Never mind actual things like range and payload and human judgment, et cetera.
A lot of the drones that they're using, they're basically using them as cheap and really crude cruise missiles. I saw the Ukrainians hit a Russian depot with it was like something with a propeller engine, They put like a Cessna and put explosives in it equivalent and flew that. Like we can already do that. Like this stuff isn't more capable than artillery when it comes to like making things blow up at range. It's for a different set of circumstances. It's not replacing conventional weapon systems. But some people just want to agree with everything Elon Musk says, so they think,
Well, I mean, a lot of it's like a sunk cost fallacy of like agreement, or like the tribal mentality version of a sunk cost fallacy, where for the longest time he was your biggest asset for affecting a political outcome. So you were riding his coattails and you were pumping him up for the longest fucking time. And as soon as he says something stupid, you're already bought into the Elon train, as it were, or whoever. If they do something stupid, not everybody's going to be like, I was with him for 99% of everything else, but that's a dumb take. They're just going to be like, no, man, he's smarter than you. That's why he's got like $40 billion, or however rich he is. So he must be right and all that shit. So
I think in particular that was in reference to, he was talking about why the F-35 program should be canceled.
Right.
Yeah.
Comparing it cost effectiveness to, to our best drone technology. And, I thought that like the Air Force had already canceled the future orders for the F-35.
It's the only new fighter in production. I mean, the only other thing they have is like 15. So
it's the only new fighter that we can sell. So because there are export variants of it, and like half the world is bought onto it. And that goes back to a big old conspiracy theory I have, which is the reason that, the cap scored, but the reason that there's so much talk about, drones have rendered all these next gen fighter airplanes obsolete, is because China sells a lot of drones. What they don't sell a lot of is their fucking fighter craft. Nobody wants to buy that shit. That J-20 fucking flying Falcon Dragon, whatever, Falcor, whatever the fuck they're calling it. Like, nobody's buying that shit. And nobody's buying a lot of their other stuff. Even the people that like helped them develop it aren't buying them. So nobody really wants to buy Chinese export fighter craft, but they are buying a shitload of their drones. And so it's no secret that China is running a huge global, propaganda wing and that kind of warfare. So why would we not expect them to try and say like, hey, fighter craft are obsolete. What you really want is drones. They're the future, because they can make money off of that shit. And the other thing is, they don't actually believe it's obsolete because they keep trying to fucking build these new fighter aircraft.
They got like a straight up copy of the F-35 they're trying to make now.
Yeah, I mean, you can order it off of Temu. It's
Well, it's a very long old argument, dating back to the James Fallow, you know, think tank and all those people, who, were fighting tooth and nail against us developing, cutting edge fighter systems and fewer numbers of air superiority fighters in favor of larger numbers of less technically advanced fighters, right up until Gulf War One, where the U.S. achieved the most devastating victory in world history in the shortest period of time against what was supposedly the third biggest army in the world at the time.
fourth at the time.
Yeah, and then Fallows and all of those people jumped on and said, "See, you did what we told you to do all along." Just crazy, crazy people.
The light fighter mafia hated the F-16, even though it was everything they wanted, until it worked, and then they were just like, "Yeah, the F-16 is because of us. Like, we were the ones that said to do that."
As I recall, really, the light fighter mafia just wanted to build thousands and thousands of F5s and just roll those.
And you have like Pierre Spray out there. For a while, he was claiming he was the designer of the A-10 or the designer of the F-16. He was never even in the military. He never worked for General Dynamics or Fairchild. He was just a Department of Defense wonk. And
a lot of delusions of grandeur out there hanging on the fringes of the defense culture.
I saw a Twitter post from one of these guys. They're kind of complaining because, well, man, all the original, defense dissidents or whatever they call themselves, we're getting old now. We're dying out. Nobody's replacing us. Like, yeah, you guys ran a grift for 50 years. It's time to retire.
Defense dissidents. So,
That's
they're
not
against
what it was
defense?
called. That's not what they called, but I can't remember the word they actually used. So
it's out
in
there.
The Navy. We just call them admirals.
I can't remember the gentleman's name, but to anybody who's not read it, I highly recommend. There is a gentleman, Air Force fighter pilot's master's or PhD dissertation that he did at Vanderbilt. It's available online because it's still very popular all these years later. It's called Revolt of the Majors. And if you look up Revolt of the Majors and find the PDF on it, it is absolutely one of the finest things that I have ever read about, that talks about Fallows, it talks about John Boyd, and I can remember in the day where we were OODA looping everything. Oh, you gotta, it's the OODA and stuff like that. Oh, it's so great. Oh, Boyd was fighter pilot. Oh, it's so great. Oh man, we've learned so much. It's applied so much to small unit tactics and CQB and stuff like that. And then somebody turned me on to this guy's thesis, and I read Revolt of the Majors, and that's the last time I ever used the OODA loop or talked about Boyd as being somebody or something else like that. It completely turned me around, but it's fascinating reading for anybody listening who's never gotten in it. That will give you a very big insight into what I've always been, so behind, which is the fact that the way that we do science in this country, not just defense science, but all science, is what keeps us ahead of the world. And
are you talking about Marshall Michael?
That I don't know anything. Okay. I don't know anything about that. But it's the essence of this is that at the end of World War II, Hap Arnold sat down and brought in a young general named Bernie Schreiber, who began the Air Force Missile Command. And what he told him was the partnership between academia, the defense industry, and the military that brought us success in World War II has to be continued at all costs. And there has to be a mechanism for doing that. So the development of DARPA was part of that. That the Air Force as a service took the lead in future technology for the Department of Defense was part of that.
Well, that was also because Hap Arnold realized how far behind in like certain German experimental aircraft that both the Americans and the British really wanted to get their hands on. So they operated, or they did an operation called Operation Lusty, which was as the front lines pushed further and further into Germany, they had very specific units of Air Force personnel who were fluent in German, and like it was a lot of P-47 Thunderbolt fighter pilots because they were able to fly in frickin' anything. Like the P-47 was its own can of worms in and of itself, but what they wanted to do was they wanted to find intact experimental German aircraft, or advanced as far as we were concerned, and fly it back to the United States so that we could reverse engineer it and that stuff. And that's where that's where they really picked up on the research for the swept wing and how much that increases on and like jet turbines and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and so that was rolled into Operation Paperclip.
East German scientists.
Yeah, but it was basically, it was like, hey, we know we're behind in terms of like aeronautical science and research. We want to be not behind. So before the guys on the ground just destroy everything because it's got a swastika on it, we need to go in there and grab what we can and bring it back and then study it. And if that equipment happens to be a German rocket scientist, bring him back too. Like,
yeah. Yep.
People who are cool. Hey, as they kept telling us with the old joke about the M82 being an material rifle, that chemis are equipment.
But what you're forgetting here, Coop, is that the Wehrmacht had the largest number of PhDs of any army. So
yeah, and they made a ton of great stuff for us to steal after we kicked their asses. I mean,
well, Annie Jacobson has written a lot about that, and she's somebody I recommend very highly. She's a defense journalist who's wrote a great history of Area 51 and has talked about the history of DARPA, and the covert activities, a lot of different stuff that she's done, and done a very, very credible job on. Her latest book on nuclear war, A Scenario, is an absolutely fascinating read and a good job. But part of more than that of just bringing the talent in is in the post-war years, we made a very conscious decision that we were going to fund science in this country. And this continues to this day. Is the way that we do science in the United States is different than the way science is done anywhere in the world. In the entire rest of
because
the world,
a lot of the rest of the world knows that they can wait for us to do it and then try and steal it from us.
And this is the reason why, I'm telling you, is from the top, and the way that all these things are set up is we do not direct science. We fund open-ended research in science. So in the rest of the world outside of the United States of America, all government-funded science is directed science. So if they say, we want a cure for AIDS, we don't fund anything that we don't determine could have applicability to AIDS. Therefore, nothing else gets discovered pharmaceutically. As opposed to the way that we fund and do science. And if you look at the number of university engineering departments that are primarily funded by DARPA, in addition to all of the individual grants that DARPA writes and things like that, if they think the science itself is sound, they fund it. Because you never have any idea what's going to come out of whatever is being researched. It very much goes back to the James Burke theory of connections. This historical theory of the natural development of technology. We're supposed to, like, in a way, what we were all brought up, in grade school as Americans in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, these are all the fantastic things that happened because of Thomas Edison. These are all the great things that happened because of men like Henry Ford, stuff like that, rather than the way, of course, we all know it really happens is here's a guy who takes advantage of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 other developments that somebody else has come up with in like the same way until somebody just says, wow, if I took this and I took this and I put this together and there's a new application for it. And that's really how kind of science catapults and it builds and it does things, other than saying like, we're only going to fund research to give us an anti-gravity machine. Whereas the kinds of things that might lead to the anti-gravity machine, you can't direct it because you don't know what scientific breakthroughs and how many different fields of endeavor are going to give you that breakthrough.
Right.
So sometimes it's one of those things where they get on with Congress is like, they're funding. They gave $150,000 to study how shrimp run on a treadmill. This is waste, fraud, and abuse. Not understanding that the end application of that research is studying natural animated motion that's now like, the little, the micro robots that we have that mimic animal motion and things like that. So I guess I'm probably talking on both sides of my mouth because when we get into some of this whack ass like sociologic research that is funded, which is is not scientific.
It's like you said, if the science is sound, but the sociological side, it's very clearly not sound in most of those cases.
Very much agreed, but that is why we continue to be ahead. And when Eisenhower's talking about the military-industrial complex, he was not talking about our partnership between advanced research and the Department of Defense in keeping us, multiple generations ahead of all of our adversaries. So I have a lot of experience on the inside of that, and can say that there's absolutely no question that technologically, that we are leaps and bounds ahead of anybody in the world and will always remain so because it's a culture of freedom and free expression of thought and research that allows us to do so.
Oh,
right. And a lot of it isn't just like whether it's directed versus undirected. What I think some people might be getting caught up in the undirected thing is it's just like, hey, here's a bunch of money, just come back a year later and tell us what you got. No, a lot of it is like people you'll send out a request for a proposal or a request for viability and stuff like that of, hey, we want to do research in this area. And a lot of defense labs and research labs will be like, hey, here's like 10 programs that we thought up one Sunday night that we want to study. Here's how we can connect that to what you're looking into. And they'll just be like, all right, I got no argument with that. Here's your grants and all that stuff. And that's how a lot of programs get funded. I used to work for a lab that did that shit. So it's
well, DARPA grants are, there's milestones that you have to reach or the money gets cut off. There are review boards who look at what's going on, and if things aren't moving forward, the dollars get cut off. There are definitely hoops, as opposed to, it's like I say, that's how it works in engineering departments and in pharmacology departments, and that's how it works in in like hard science departments, and like sociology departments and gender studies departments and stuff like that. They're all working off endowments. They're not working on government grants. They're working off private endowments, and they can do whatever they want with the money.
But the other thing is like, so a national level research lab that specializes in like aeronautics or something like that, they're not going to come up and be like, hey, we wanted to, look into like the sociology of ballet or something. It's like, no, they know they're going to be working on aircraft shit and like aeronautical shit. So they're going to come up with ways that they can advance that field, or at least theorize in how they can advance that field. and then go to the government and just be like, hey, this is what we're working on. Can we have some money for it? And that's how that exchange goes. Or the other way around, the government can be like, hey, we want our fuel tankers to be able to carry this much more fuel at this much faster speed for this much longer range and that stuff. And that's the details. That's all they say. And then to just be like, hey, all you big shots in the defense industry, show us what you got. And that's where everybody crams together on a fucking weekend, and everybody's in there with their pocket protectors and their glasses and smoking cigarettes and being like, all right, how do we do this shit? And that's where they submit a proposal that says, we might not be able to build you a new plane that can do that, but we can figure out how to attack this problem. Like, you're coming at it with one big problem. We've broken it down into 50 little problems, and we can solve maybe 2 of them, or we've got ideas on how we might be able to solve 2 or 3 of them. And then the other companies can worry about the other stuff.
You can read a lot of those open competitions, and when you read the requirements, I'm sure you've done it. You go through, and after you get used to it, you go through and they go like, they already know the product that they want. They already know what vendor they want to buy this from. They wrote the requirements,
and it's always SIG
that product, but it's got to be submitted as an open competition. It's pretty funny,
and it's always SIG.
But that was okay, because I'm pretty sure that one dude from the firearm blog is still seething that they didn't pick Glock for the new handgun. He wrote posts about how mad he was. It was hilarious.
Oh yeah, I'm not a huge SIG guy. I actually like the Legion triggers less than your stock Glock trigger, because they're so spongy. But all the same, just watching the Glock fanboys melt down over that contract was just hilarious.
I own a couple of SIGs, but they're both rifles. I've never owned a SIG handgun.
I don't own an M17, but like on this last contract, getting them spun up for competition, they needed a day of like pistol. So they asked me to run a day of action pistol refresher for them, and I've run their M17s many times and stuff like that, and it's it's a pistol. There's nothing wrong with that. Actually, the new SIG closed emitter red dot sight is actually pretty good, and I have no problems with it. I think the guys should have a lot of confidence in their secondary weapon, which they will never use for anything in their entire freaking career except shooting it on the range. But hey,
that's why when they said they were going to put a red dot sight on the military pistol, like, you guys don't realize how very little those actually get used. They're going to last 5 years now.
90% of the time, the reason you carry a pistol, if you're issued one, is because, like, hey, you can't go anywhere on base without being armed. But you can leave your rifle here if you've got a pistol. And they're like, oh, that's so much easier. I can have both my hands and shit, and I can carry twice as much stuff from the PX and that stuff.
If you're an assaulter, your pistol is your secondary. It's your lifesaver when your big gun goes down. And for everybody else, it's an accoutrement.
I am glad
it never gets used.
And the guys,
I'm glad they went to the trouble of making the new pistol baby poop brown, though, so it blends in real well when you're hiding from the drone on thermal, right? It's signature reduction. We got to make it flat, dark earth. Like,
signature reduction just reminds me of all the terms that mean the same shit that we've been talking about for like centuries, but somebody had to coin a new phrase of it so that they could get like that put on their CV or their like hybrid warfare.
The Freedom Group. Remember the Freedom Group when they bought up Remington and Bushmaster and well, they had the ATAX camo and they were selling AAC suppressors, and they had this thing called Total Signature Reduction, TSR, and it was wild.
I remember when it was called concealability. Just
Well, I tell you, the M17 is just another plastic pistol. The M7 is a total debacle, but that M250 is a game changer.
Yeah.
That bad boy is going to be a game changer, and if they ever actually, issue it to guys in 6.8, it's good. You would love it. You would love it. It is definitely a next generation squad weapon. It is a
Right.
huge jump up from the M249, and about matches the M240 or outdoes it in so many ways. And it's such a convenient package. So, like I say, that if we had to get stuck with the XM7 to get the XM250, it was worth it.
Yeah. I mean, I can get behind it. Have you played with the recoil mitigated 337?
337 or 338?
No, 338. My bad. Just all these M17s and M7s and all that shit.
Oh yeah, everyone. No, who was? Gosh darn it! Like I say, I was just down at Maneuver Warfighter Symposium a couple months ago, and saw just about everybody's, everything, and was playing with it, and was pretty favorably impressed. But you know what? The things that are coming online that like only make sense right now is who is it who's making like a switch barrel upgrade for like the M240 for 6.8, which is, there's so many things out there. Everything in the, one of the biggest things, one of the biggest contracts right now, there's no money in the Department of Defense. There's always a little bit of money, but I mean, overall, there's like no money. Let me tell you, the M4 is going to be around a long time. There's another SOP mod upgrade that's coming out right now. That's, it's a Daniel Defense upper with like a key mod rail, and I can't even, and just everything else is standard. That's just going to go on all the current M4 lowers right now. Believe me, that is a ginormous contract that Daniel Defense is the primary contractor on that, and it's going to include, the Blue Force Gear VTAC sling and and all these other stuff. It's just because we've had all these SFAB guys and stuff like that running all over the world, carrying 20-year-old SOP Mod 1 M4s, and everybody they go and work with is working. What are you running around with those big old clunky quad rail M4s for? Look what we're running here, key mod and
unless they're working with the Brits.
Stocks and it's like, man, the U.S. military is ghetto.
Yeah, well, unless they're working with the Brits, because I'm pretty sure the British Royal Marines still use the fucking SA-87.
Yeah, the SA-80. Yeah, I think they are stuck with them, but they're like everybody. The poor Brits, their military, their entire military force, like you could fit on our smallest military base.
Right. They haven't upgraded since like the Falklands.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, you could take like the entirety of like the Royal Marines, the Royal Navy, the Royal Air Force, the Army. You could take all the territorials, which are their reserves, and you could fit it on 29 Palms. And then with all the room, that's probably a bad.
And they'd all die because it's a desert.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Like we even get a climate.
You could fit them all in Lejeune, and they would have more room than they currently have on their own base. The Brits have the tiniest military on planet Earth.
They'd have no idea what to do with a barracks room that big. They'd be like, "This is bigger than my house, and I paid £2,000 for that."
Which, like, say, they're wonderful. They're wonderful guys, but they're like mired in a system that doesn't want them.
And they'll be able to get like V6 Mustangs for only 30% APR. That'll just blow their minds too. They've never known such luxury being British. So,
but it's another 24% value added tax on top of that.
Yeah, and it's the same with Canuckistan. The Canadians have the teeny tiniest military that their country doesn't even want. and they're fantastic guys. But hopefully, if they become the 51st state, we can help them out.
Coop was making the point, was it yesterday or the day before, that no, we don't want another. We don't. Canada doesn't get to be another state. They're a territory.
Yeah. I will take American Samoa and Guam before I take their
right. Yeah, American. They're on par with American Samoa, right?
Yeah, and it's you're just North Puerto Rico at this point.
That's apt in many ways.
I mean, yeah, they're just as corrupt. But what you got? Yesterday we were also talking about something like the scale of the British military, because Mike was, as he is, he's just like 40K is fucking ridiculous sometimes. Like I don't think that their sci-fi writers understand the sense of scale, and I'm like, well, it might not just be sci-fi writers. It might just be the fact that they're British, and 1,000 Space Marines in a chapter sounds like a lot. Like,
right.
That's really big, isn't it?
It's like we have an entire galaxy to patrol. Well, 1,000 will do. Like that's our biggest regiment, right? Like, how big do militaries get?
Which is always really one of the, it's like, it's like, God bless them. I still frequently write in somebody else's universe, and there's always, our head guy in charge, God bless him, always gets down to some kind of argument. It's like, do you realize we're talking about the entire galaxy here? You're telling me there can't be one country on one planet in the entire galaxy that that I'm writing about that nobody else could have heard of, like within your property. It's like, oh Lord, give me a break.
Yeah.
Which is why I try not to write in anybody else's property, because I hate being constrained that way.
You love 40K.
Yeah, well, they're not begging me to write for them.
Yeah. They're not begging any of us to write for them, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Not these days. But,
so, Pete, you remember I sent you? I never got to follow up with you, but I sent you a message. It was a few months ago about some fans thanking you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will tell you now who was a member of the group who was complimenting. I can't remember. Forgive me. I haven't thought about it for a little while, and I never picked up the phone to get back to you. But essentially, it's to tell people a friend of mine who I work with in my other business, who takes care of the law enforcement end of the business, who's a fairly well-known, high-placed individual in law enforcement circles, is part of a group of people who've been communicating over the last 3 years, making plans for how to move forward should Trump win. And a lot of them are people you have heard of, Pash Patel, and they reached out to me through my partner, who's a member of the group, and say, tell Pete we like his shit and to keep it up.
I'm gonna laugh so hard if there's a military exercise named after Maelstrom Rising.
Yes, exactly. It's like
we're not being subtle, China. Guess what we're practicing?
Yeah. Options.
They're dudes in the know who are out there who totally appreciate what you're doing. Who they found it very, very entertaining, plausible, meaningful. Had just good meat to it. Which ultimately is what I know. Like this group right here. Why even? I know we're all the same. It's like, why even write anything if you're not writing for people who are like us? Everybody else can get on board and dig it or not dig it, but it's like people like us, if it's not written for them so they dig it, there's no point of writing.
No. Well, some of what a lot of my stuff I've described it into, there are two aspects to it. One is shooter wish fulfillment. It's like, And the other is on the flip side of the coin is kind of cautionary tale type stuff. Like Lex Talionis was, oh, you really want to go ahead and get it over with and kick off the next Civil War, do you? Are you sure you really want that?
Well, at least we know the cartels will be pushovers.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of Doc. I don't think you're on the Twitter, the X, whatever it is, but
Barely. I have
there's
an account, and I think every time I go on Megyn Kelly, I like put up the video and go like, "Hey, was on Megyn Kelly today," and that's about it.
there's a lot of dudes out there who think Iraq and the GWAT were absolute failures. They were just pushed on us by scheming warmongers in the military-industrial complex, and they were bad, and we committed all these atrocities, and they were horrible. But what we need to do is go to war with the Mexican cartels, because that'll work out great. That's
right.
I'm not saying we don't need to go to. I mean, we might have to go to war.
Right.
But if you think the war on terror was bad, wait until we have a better funded, better trained groups on our fucking border.
on the Mexican cartel. It's like I'm pretty sure that there is no reality where that is going to happen. There is no reality where that is going to happen. It's like it's just I spent the better part of a decade dealing with military operations in Central and South America, and it's just there's not a legal basis to do anything kinetic. There's just not. It doesn't exist. In fact, it's like Northcom as a combatant command was only stood up at the end of the 90s, and it only became somewhat active in the early 21st century.
But Northcom gets stood up. Canada never wins another Stanley Cup after that.
Yeah, that's right. That's
accomplished.
But it's like I fulfilled contracts in Mexico for Northcom. In the last one was about it's probably 8 years ago, working with the Mexican Marines. It's like I say, there's just not a mechanism in place to, for those things to happen. There's just not.
And
it's great to dream that it could be like Sicario, and we could just, send some hard hitters down there to like blow up cartel, drug labs or whatnot. That would be really cool. But yeah, it would be really cool. But
I don't want it to be like Sicario though, because I want the FBI to be a little bit smarter than that chick was. Because holy shit, she was just wrong about everything.
Yes,
every step of the way.
Yes, she was. It is all you'd like to think that there's somebody out there who like gets it. And actually there are a lot of FBI dudes who get it, but everybody who was past 20 retired a few years ago. Secret Service and FBI, everybody who was at 20 or more retired, a few years ago. They lost a lot of talent. A lot of really good dudes punched out because they just couldn't hang with it anymore.
Well, the other thing, and I've touched on this in some of my work before as well, is we have this fixation with trying to cut the head off the snake. We'll go after the big guy, the kingpin. We get him, and we high five ourselves and give ourselves a pat on the back, and then somebody else steps in, or somebody else's step in, and all the infrastructure is still there. The networks are all still there.
Yeah, essentially the history of everybody we've ever whacked, the guy who came after him was twice as bad.
Yeah.
Except Iran. They never found a way to replace Soleimani. The replacement was kind of like more of just a yes man, not really a go-getter like Soleimani was. But the funny thing about the cartel thing was like, oh, we'll just cut the head off the snake. It was like, bro, the cartels do that to the cartels, like
That's right.
every 6 months, like that.
There's a civil war going on between El Mayo's people and Los Chapitos right now.
Yeah, because apparently, like there was like a pseudo Sicario like ripoff thing happened where like he went to the U.S. and got arrested there, and so they skipped the whole bridge scene, which was the only fun part of that movie. And now it's he's blaming it on the other guy, and so they've been fighting for what is going on 6 months now, right?
Well, they've been fighting off and on for a few years now, pretty much ever since El Chapo finally ended up in jail on this side of the border, and but it really clacked off big time in the last like 6 months. Yeah,
Mexico is a completely failed state. I refuse to let my family travel anywhere in Mexico for any reason. It has been a handful of years since I was working in Mexico. But it was just wonderful to be able to talk with the guys about what was going on, countrywide. And the reason, like I was down there at the time and doing so much work with the Mexican Marines, with the Semar, is that just the country had realized that the infiltration and corruption of the Mexican army had become so complete, they were no longer trustworthy. The Semar as a organization, the Mexican Marines, was way separate from that and was more trustworthy and just a better organization. And that's like when they got El Chapo, you saw who grabbed him, who had custody of him, was the Semar and not the Mexican army. But I mean,
so many interbranch rivalry jokes going on right now. Like,
yeah. But
Coop's
I mean,
because in the U.S., the Marines are the ones who have all the criminals.
that could be, but throughout the country, I mean, it's it's almost, if there's any security anywhere in the interior of the country, it is due to civilian militias fighting the cartels.
right.
It is very, very interesting to see. So, that at the end of that last contract, I was ready to be done with it.
and the central government hates those civilian militias with a passion too.
There's just not much else. So like I say, it's a completely failed state. And I'm sure that, Steinbaum, I'm sure the new president will not do one thing further than any of them have done before.
Well, no, in fact, she tried. It was either her or AMLO that tried to nationalize those militias into their version of the National Guard, which doesn't function like ours do. They just call it the same thing.
Yeah, that's right.
And then the army took it over and said, "No, fuck you. You're working for us now." And so it was the complete opposite of what he and she wanted. So now it's just even more of a clusterfuck.
As far as I know, the army was irretrievably infiltrated by the cartels, and are essentially ineffective as a arm of the federal government.
No, but they're good for taking out cartels that are rivals to the other cartels that the infiltrators, are working for and stuff like that.
Yeah. But that's right. But it is a failed state. I do not recommend anybody travel anywhere in the country, not even to the Yucatan, which has been a little bit insulated from the majority of all of that crime. But I don't recommend. I won't let any of my family members travel there. I mean, as messed up as our State Department is, I just send people. It's like, read the State Department advisories about travel in Mexico. Go right ahead.
Fortunately, there's still the Mexican special forces. Like, they would never turn to cartel work.
Right. Well, that was another lovely. That was one of the State Department has had Mexico frozen from Department of Defense cooperation from the post-war period only up till about 10, 12 years ago. The State Department has kept Mexico completely insulated from any Department of Defense cooperation whatsoever. And one of the very first, programs that North SOC managed was having Mexican special forces trained in this country and in their country by guys from 7th Special Forces Group. And as Coop's alluding to, is shortly after completing that training period, they all left the Army and formed the Zetas, which, yes, we trained those boys up good. Yes, we did.
And then they proceeded to tear each other apart.
Well,
which honestly has to be the most SOCOM shit I've ever heard of. Like,
right.
where they just get into like some big old internal beef and that stuff.
But
our SOCOM guys fight. They just have like Twitter spats and write books. They don't.
I spent a good chunk in the mid '80s. On the border of Honduras and Nicaragua, working against the Sandinistas, and my team sergeant had a plaque in his "I love me" wall, from the Sandinistas for when he'd been down there training them, not even 6-7 years before.
Which that's how you could like talk shit to him. Just be like, man, they're slipping. You did a bad job training these guys up.
Yeah, but that's just the nature of it. That's what you do. That's what you do when you're a foot soldier of foreign policy.
Because a lot of times the foreign policy is being the foreign policy decisions are being made by people who don't actually know much about the situation and don't care.
You're telling me they don't learn all this stuff at Georgetown, though?
Yeah, well, they learn how to see in color while the rest of us see in black and white. That's what they do.
I see in red.
Well, that's your own fault. I don't know what you did with your room, but like,
it's the sign. So
what's going on in there, Kramer?
Jesse's
house, right?
See, an old friend of Mike's, I think, is paying a visit and opened another portal to hell in his living room.
Oh, it's fine. Don't worry about it. It's okay.
The red keeps the fish people away.
Now, Mike's gone from having to worry about saltwater or freshwater fish people to saltwater fish people.
Yeah, they're called Floridians.
I have told this story several times now. Saltwater fish people aren't really a thing in Florida. We blew them all up with the Navy in Operation Mad Angler in 1991. The elites don't want you to know that. But it was actually President Bush's greatest foreign policy achievement, and he couldn't campaign on it because it wasn't declassified until 2004.
I've been educated.
I'm not crazy.
Not crazy. That's right.
I'm not crazy either. I'm just wrong. Like, it's like, do you really think that? It's like, no. It's just making this shit up as I go.
But I do got to dip, guys. Doc, it was good seeing you again. Guys.
Mike, it is a pleasure. You're looking good, buddy.
Oh, thank you. Damn
it's
right.
the red.
It's the moonlight. It's the moonlight.
It's totally your color, bro.
Lovely things to your eyes.
And I don't have to go because of anything involving the red light. That's not.
So
my appointment's right now, guys. Like, come on.
Actually, it is the red light. It's rejuvenating to the skin and stuff like that. And it's like I bought one of those for my wife for Christmas. I know she's not listening, so perfectly said. Nobody we know would tell her either who's listening. But yeah, it's supposed to tone the skin and get rid of wrinkles.
It like burns out specific layers of fat and then like increases collagen production or stuff like that.
There's supposedly science behind it, but I don't know. If
you can tell because that shit's expensive as fuck.
Yeah, that was it was like $1,200 or something like that. So, but it's all the rage. So, we'll find out. Next time we see each other, if I'm looking younger, it's because I will have been using the red light.
That's your contribution to the undirected science. So we'll find out.
Yeah.
I believe in the acid test. I believe you jump in the, science requires testing, and I've always felt just fine about being a test subject. So
it's that MK Ultra stuff.
I'm looking all kinds of younger next time you see me. I'll have been, putting my wife's red light lamp on my face or something like that.
So, did you just? It's like one of those tanning bed wall things, but it's just a red light.
Yeah, it's like kind of like a small Quonset hut like thing that you can put over your face or over other parts of your body, and it's supposed to do all kinds of marvelous things for you.
Fucking A.
Yeah, like I'm saying, I learn, I share with my brothers. There's no such thing as bad knowledge. Do with it as you will.
Have you seen the internet? There is absolutely such things as bad knowledge. It's like Mike will be like, "How do you know all these memes?" I'm like, "Dude, you haven't seen what I've seen, man." Like I was on the internet when it was completely unregulated, the Wild West. 2004. 4chan is the biggest thing. We hadn't even heard of Reddit, bro. I've seen some shit. Like there is some bad knowledge out there.
I was kind of busy in 2004.
Yeah.
We had the internet, but we were mostly getting smoked instead of using the internet. So
you got that good knowledge.
Just trying to think. What was I just looking at? Good. Oh, well, the douche me here. Jack Murphy just published a new book that I'm reading right now. Jack Murphy of Soft Rep fame, who he was a 75th and a SF guy, but he
I'd never heard of him.
He just wrote a book called We Defy, which is untold stories from over generations of U.S. Army Special Forces, and he goes through quite a few things: Blue Light and Dead A, and then standing up the commanders in extremist forces, and then a really good history of Special Forces Det K, Detachment K, Korea, things like that. Highly recommended. I've just been going through it, and I know just about everybody in the book who they've talked to during their period of time, but it's more fascinating reading that I'm glad to see coming to light. And it's one of those things where another fascinating book that I highly recommend, that again shows everybody how history is never complete. And even now, almost 80 years later from World War II, that we are getting valuable information. Codename Spike. Codename Spike. It's great. Jack Walizewski was a third group guy, third group warrant officer who he was doing something at DOD and came across files from the OSS, World War II, the Office of Strategic Services, and found a complete manuscript of a book written by an OSS operator operating in the Balkan Peninsula, in that theater of warfare in the OSS. And the fellow wrote the book at the time, like 1946, after his time as an operator in the OSS, but it was classified and never got released. And this SF guy found it, took it, went through the trouble to get it and a couple of other manuscripts he found declassified, and then went through and edited them and kind of cleaned them up a little bit and did the research to find who everybody was that this OSS operator was referring to in what became Yugoslavia and is now, so many different countries. and backed it all up, did fantastic research. It is just the best book. And you know why it's classified, because the democracy movements in the Balkan Peninsula, in Yugoslavia, Churchill lobbied against them so that all of the Allied covert aid was going to the fucking communists. Yep, which is very much how the Yugoslavia fell to the communists, because it's expedient for England and the Churchill. Once you get more history like this, and you look back at it and you realize that the Brits and the U.S. State Department were infiltrated by the Soviets from day one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
No, the foreign policy of Western Europe and the United States was completely infiltrated and influenced, if not run, by the Soviets since before the end of World War II.
Well, you know who Harry Hopkins was?
Mm-mm.
He was FDR's right-hand man. He was basically FDR's hatchet man. He wasn't his vice president. He was just kind of his facilitator. Harry Hopkins was a paid Soviet agent, and we know that because of Venona, because we were reading the Soviets' mail from 1941 to 1951. The amount that we knew from Venona that we didn't act on because it was classified until 1994 is appalling.
It is utterly, yes, it's maddening. But I bring this up just because there are things that I've read recently that are wonderful, wonderful military history. Some of it older, World War II, some of it much more contemporaneous to our period of time, and living through the Cold War and into the modern age, and things like that deal with special operations, and special operations, being the foot soldiers of our foreign policy, that what's going on in the world and what the predominant worldview is based on what people like SF are doing. And it's amazing we're anywhere at all, and the farther you go back, like I say, the more that is revealed about the imbecility and the completely counter American policies that have existed for 80 years in this country and our foreign policy. It's just disgusting.
Well, look at you read Ghost Wars about the Soviet-Afghan War and our involvement there.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
So we put so much faith in the Pakistanis that we basically leaned on them to handle the majority of the aid going to the Mujahideen. So they funneled most of it to Hekmatyar, who we were then fighting because he aligned himself with the Taliban because he was one of the big time jihadis and choking off the likes of Masood or Al-Haq, who were, they were definitely more aligned with our sort of view of life. They were still Muslims, so that there's obviously going to be a certain degree of separation there, but they weren't hardcore jihadis, and that became evident when Al Qaeda assassinated Masood in 2001.
Wait. I was told that the CIA totally trained the Taliban and only the Taliban, and that 9/11 was our fault because of that.
Yeah, the Taliban was a tool of a Pakistani ISI from the beginning.
What? It's almost like all the stuff that we knew beforehand is true, and it's not just some revisionist fucking history thing.
It's crazy.
Well, the revisionism comes with people not remembering shit that was abundantly obvious at the time,
right?
Most of the time.
Well, it's also people who were never taught it, but they were taught the sound bites and the bumper sticker slogans and all that shit. And it's so ingrained in their mind that they'll change their minds about all sorts of other stuff, and they'll shift political positions and that stuff. But that was such an ingrained part of their childhood that they just hold on to it, which is why like after the disastrous pullout in Afghanistan and that stuff, everybody was just being like, oh yeah, remember Rambo 3 when we had like the in support of the brave Mujahideen fighters and all that shit? Haha, how did that turn out? It's like, yeah, not every Muj was a Taliban. It's like,
In fact, a lot of the old school
Yeah.
mood. I mean, so they assassinated Massoud on September 10th, 2001.
mhm.
Al-Haq was caught and executed going back into the country to help the Northern Alliance. And Al-Haq was another one of the big time 80s Muj commanders.
It's like I've fought alongside guys from the Muj. I've also fought alongside guys who were former Muj and former Taliban, and then were A&A. Like they were just, you know, it's like, hey man, shit gets weird around here, and you know.
Oh yeah, there were dudes who fought for the communists.
Yeah.
Then the Muj, then the communists, then the Northern Alliance, then the Taliban, then the government of Afghanistan.
Yeah, it's like
People in the States don't really understand just how fluid loyalties can be.
there's a trend. Everybody's like, oh man, Afghanistan beats all these empires. It's a graveyard of empires, man. They beat everybody. It's like, no, because they're always betting on whichever horse is currently in first place. Like they are shifting that stuff as the situation goes.
And it's not so much that they beat anybody. They're just an enormous pain in the ass until people get fed up and leave. Yeah. Unfortunately,
all they do is don't die. Like, and even they kind of suck at that too. It's like, you know,
that's a habitual line crosser talking about his analogy of I'm just tired of beating on you.
Yeah. It was like
at the same time, however, we're also dealing with the problem that we got tired and we left, but unfortunately, the problem not only is still there, but
now it has consequences.
Now it has consequences
all over the place.
Yeah, well, you know, 20 years of American lives, blood, sweat, and treasure, and we replaced the Taliban with the Taliban. Except we've armed them better, and nobody's ever been held accountable. You know, knock on wood.
No. There was one guy that was held accountable. The former battalion commander of 1-8, which was the same battalion that lost 12 Marines at Abbey Gate, he asked for accountability, and he was fired.
That's right. That's right. One, you know, about the only guy who stood up and said something. Yep. God bless him.
Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Scheller.
Yeah, God bless him. You know, well, it's like I say, I've been waiting for it to be January 20th, you know, every day since the election. You know, I'm ready for it tomorrow. And, you know, at some level, I just hope that we get guys like Cash Patel in there. You know, Pete Hegseth didn't stand out as my top choice to become SecDef, but, you know, that they're so against him makes me want him even more.
It's not even that they're so against him. It's that, like, all right, I don't think he'd be bad at the job. He just, like you said, he wouldn't be my first choice, but at the same time, it's like, how much does the one guy in charge really need to have a handle on everything? You don't think he's going to have a staff of people that can, like, kind of guide him through this stuff? Like, in terms of, actually, like, who do I talk to get this information? Who do I talk to get this information? Who are we sharing this with? Blah, 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 blah.
And in all studies in leadership, you know, there's always people who are the biggest standouts, like Pershing.
Yeah.
Not because he was the most brilliant general. He knew how to recognize talent and how to take advice from people who knew more than he did. And he wasn't an ego-driven leader.
Right.
You know, I mean, you know, I'm sure you've read, if you haven't read his book, you've heard about, you know, like, you know, Pete Hegseth's military service and what he's done. I mean, he's a grunt. You know, God bless him. You know, and he's had to go through the woke nonsense and, you know, suffer through that as a field grade officer, you know, and get sent home, from the most basic like National Guard kind of mission because they didn't like his tattoo, thought he was a white supremacist. Oh
The other
no,
thing is,
I would love to see him as SecDef and clean these people out of the Department of Defense. It would be fantastic.
the other thing is like what is their avenue of attack? Because which I'm not for adultery at all. However, if you're going to be like, oh, he can't be SecDef because like he had a fling with some chick, it was like, okay, who would you suggest? Petraeus? Like how far down the line of just shitty behavior that top generals and all them have gone through? Like
Hillary Clinton's machine destroyed Petraeus, destroyed Wes Clark, destroyed Stan McChrystal. Now some of them deserve to be destroyed,
right?
But as the others, that whole like betray us and what they did against Petraeus is because Hillary Clinton's machine was afraid that he was going to come back and run for the Democratic nomination for president and that he was competition.
So I kind of still have a grudge against McChrystal because of some of his ROEs going into Afghanistan in 10. But
I didn't know him. I know people who worked for him on Task Force Black who told me that he was a decent guy, but it was like that the guy ran his mouth in a way to let everybody know that he thought he was the smartest guy in the room, that he wanted to be president of the United States, and that he was a gun grabber. And that those are the things that stood out about Stan McChrystal.
Wait, are we talking about McChrystal or MacArthur? Because like it's basically the same shit.
Yeah, very much. But that they say, oh, Stan's a good guy, but he's a gun grabber. If he ends up being president, he's going to try and dismantle the Second Amendment. He's basically said that. He'll say that in a room full of friggin' operators.
Yeah.
Which is the wrong audience for that bullshit.
Yeah, that's not it. But he hung himself, trying to become famous and hanging around with the Rolling Stone reporter. Well, he deserved what happened to him.
That's what kills me, man. It was like y'all know better than to talk to the Rolling Stones. Like
to any reporter.
Yeah.
Like if you wanted to appear in print or our modern version of that, don't say it around a reporter.
Yeah.
I remember before my first deployment, we were watching Green Street Hooligans on like our little portable DVD players because it was back then. And it was like they make a big deal, but it was like, oh, journalists are the worst. I was like, where the fuck is this? You're a fucking soccer hooligan gang. Like why journalists of all people? And then like after that tour, it's like, oh, I get it. I like absolutely get it. It doesn't matter what your profession is, just journalists are the worst.
Yeah. Well, one of the things they're going after Hegseth about also is that like he topped out at major, so it's like, oh, he's never had to run the big national, really big organizations. And I'm just reminded of every time one of us opines something about the GWAT, it's like, oh, the sergeant's going to tell us how to win the war. And then 2021 comes around, it's like, well, couldn't have done worse than you sons of bitches.
Well, it's also it's who gets selected to get promoted that high up to where you're doing like national level stuff. It's the people that either A, aren't going to be a threat to the people promoting them. They just be like, oh yeah, I need to fill a slot. Here you go. But I know my job is safe because you're not getting up this high. Or it's the yes men. It's like, hey, I need somebody in my corner that's going to back everything I say. So here you go and all that shit. The guy that's got a head on his shoulders and the force of presence to actually get stuff done, he's a threat to everybody above them. So he's generally not the guy that gets picked up for that stuff. So, and it was like, what were we saying back in like, between like 2009 to 2015? We were just like, hey, all the smart guys are getting out. Like they're sick of this shit. They're not staying in for this stuff. And it's the people that you fucking hated that screwed you over every step of the way because they were just playing the game. Those are the guys that stayed in. So it's like, oh no, he didn't make it past major. Oh, Can't have none of that in my military.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I know several, but definitely.
All right, like rank structures are different in SOF and all that stuff. I'm talking about.
No, but I mean, in general, it's like, I'm just thinking of personal acquaintances. My favorite people in the officer world topped out at 05. I know a couple of 06s who are like the best guys you could ever imagine. I mean, our Trump's last SecDef, Chris Miller, who was the first SF SecDef, I really thought, he probably didn't want the job, but I was really hoping Trump was going to bring him back in. Arguably the smartest, best SecDef we ever had. But he's probably had his fill of federal government and didn't want to come back, which is still a real tragedy. But
that's also how that like they should have the job. It's the same thing we say with president. It's like, I want the guy that has to be dragged kicking and screaming into office.
Right. Why do the guy who wants the job is not the guy we want. Yeah. The guy actively politicking and campaigning for the job is not the guy we want. Same thing that Trump and his people surprised out of the blue thought Pete Hegseth and offered him the job is another check in the plus side of the column for me. Is like, he wasn't going to Mar-a-Lago and campaigning for the job. He kind of got flat-footed and asked if he'd take the job. All right.
I think it'd be hilarious if you had a guy that was like, I want a SecDef that has been like NJP'd a ridiculous amount of time. It's like, you served 15 years and got out as corporal. That's
You've been a corporal.
He's got more service stripes on his sleeve than he does
chevrons.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, too funny.
It's like, Corporal 5th award. How do you do it? Like,
traditionally Congress despises non-commissioned officers moving up at those levels of any of the individual armed force, Department of Army, Department of Navy, anything else like that. You guys are too young to remember, but it was in the 80s. There was was he a congressman or somewhere? But John Tower had been a career naval NCO, and he got put up for SecDef, and the Senate absolutely destroyed him. They do not want an enlisted man.
Because they never rub elbows with enlisted. That's like, ew, the pores are here. Like, you have to do some Oliver Twist story to fucking get in that.
More food, please, sir.
I know plenty of E3s that say that shit.
Yeah, pretty funny. So he's got a real panel of people who I think are going to be game changers, and I think right now the sheriff's jails are full of illegal alien criminals who have ICE detainers on them that have been sitting there forever because ICE won't pick them up on their detainers. Then day one, Tom Homan is going to go into every sheriff's jail and empty them of illegal aliens. The jails are literally going to be emptied, in days.
He's the one I'm looking forward to, because like his demeanor is just, he has been at this so long that he is all out of fucks to give, and like he's
definitely got a fire in his belly, doesn't he? He's definitely, the guy's been in law enforcement and Customs and Border Patrol, for so long, and been the subject of, what has to be the most politically hampered branch of federal law enforcement, and is subject to dealing with the utter human misery caused by these Democrats and all of their terrible policies.
What are you talking about? I thought human trafficking was great.
Yeah, it's good if you're a Democrat who owns a business that likes child labor.
Yeah.
Labor, sure.
That too.
That
No,
too.
they're fine. There's tons of that. There's
Yeah.
there's tons of child trafficking, yes, but child labor, and labor in general, that's feeding all
Well,
of these Democrat, donors to the DNC, keeping all their business and cheap labor.
I don't even want him like. I don't need him to just focus on the southern border and Mexico and that stuff. I want to see a border patrol and Department of State or Homeland Security focus on like the Chinese tongs on the West Coast, like the actual gangs that, yeah, most of their members are like American born and that shit, but they're answering to fucking straight up agents out of China. Like,
oh yeah.
I want to see us disrupt that shit.
Sun Yi-on, the largest of the Hong Kong triads, swore allegiance to the CCP in 1997. They are a bought and paid for covert action arm of the CCP.
They know who's buttering the bread.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's no question about it. Yep.
And all for it, good on him if he can clear out a whole big swath of the illegals, but it's all the ones that we don't even know about and don't know where they are. Those are the real concern.
Yeah. And like I said, the problem with the tongs is that they're such they've been here for hundreds of years. Like they were back when Chinatowns were first popping up and the railroads and all that shit. The members of the tongs aren't illegal immigrants or foreign immigrants. They're American citizens that are like allegiant to foreign agents working on behalf of the CCP and that shit. And it's basically state directed gang activity to act as a forward deployed criminal organization.
Did either of you guys see that video of the Navy recruiting station that was all staffed by Chinese and recruiting all Chinese?
Yeah. Yeah, I saw it. It's infuriating. But to be fair, we've had that for years. It's just they were speaking Tagalog instead of Chinese. So
yeah, I was about to say, can you even be in culinary services in the Navy unless you speak Tagalog?
No, they don't even write it in English anymore.
Yeah, I was about to say, I thought that was an absolute requirement.
No, it's Filipino mafia. They're the ones that forget the military industrial complex. It's the Filipino mafia that runs the Navy.
Yeah. The thing about all these people ranting about the military industrial complex this, the military industrial complex that. First of all, about half of you have been in the military industrial complex and should know better because none of it works that well. And the other half is like, first of all, okay, you point to Ike's speech about cautioning about the military industrial complex and yeah, and Ike,
about the communists.
and Ike was also, if he hadn't been pretty much done with his term as president, would have sent major ground forces to Vietnam to reinforce the Republic of Vietnam against the North Vietnamese. In fact, JFK asked him why he didn't, and he said, because I wasn't going to drop a major war in the lap of a new president. That's the only reason he didn't commit major combatant forces to Indochina.
Yep. We were already there, though.
Oh, yeah. We were there from we had people there in the 50s.
We did. Aaron Bank, founder of Special Forces, was there. We're dealing directly with Ho Chi Minh and the Vietnam.
Speaking of books and history, this is the first half.
Oh.
And I've just barely started the second half, which covers 65 to 68. Very enlightening. Highly recommend.
I'm making a note right now. I thank you. And I put you right up there with Victor Davis Hanson. Is like I finally have dug into Xenophone's Anabasis, which is, I don't know why it's taken me so long to finally get around to it, but it has just been wonderfully enjoyable.
Yeah, I'm kicking myself because it cost enough that I was holding off getting the landmark version of Anabasis. It's out of print now, and you can't get it for less than $70. Damn it!
I see all that. I see all that too. It's all that. But when we were together on Whidbey Island this summer for the Galaxy's Edge Fan Expo and stuff like that, we got to hang out by the fire and shooting the shit as we like to do. That really, I made a note immediately on all that. I said, I got to get around to reading that, and I was driving to and from different contracts and going through Victor Davis Hanson's library one amazing book at a time and enjoying it. I said, and of course referencing Xenophon many times throughout all of his classical history. I says, God damn it, it's like Pete and I were discussing the Anabasis this summer, and it's like, why haven't you dug into it yet? And the reason is because I'm always knee deep in like 100 different things and can't get in there. But oh yes, I've been enjoying it immensely.
Xenophon also wrote Hellenica, which he intended to be an extension and completion of Thucydides' history of the Peloponnesian War. I haven't actually gotten to that one yet.
Well, there's a lot on the list. There's a lot on the list to get to, but knock on wood. I fall into the pattern, and it happens all the time, is that when I'm actively, writing and trying to knock a book out and stuff like that, I get nothing else done with the printed word. When I'm actually at it and trying to stay in a story and get something done, if I'm trying to get it done in any kind of reasonable, 100,000 word book in like whatever 7-8 weeks or however long it takes me, I get nothing else done. I don't really, I'm good for Wheel of Fortune in bed.
I put together a stack for the research for the next Paulus Group series, and I'm still chipping away at that even while I'm writing.
I got my Hooked on Phonics books, and that after that I can finally get on to what you guys are writing.
I don't think so.
Good reference.
A great book on Hannibal.
Not
John, so he knows exactly what you're talking about. But I was about to be like what, the movie guy, the fucking
the Hannibal Lecter guy, not the
the cannibal.
The Hannibal the cannibal.
I'm going to be honest. I actually like Manhunter by Brian De Palma a little bit better than the one with Jodie Foster.
Yeah,
Brian Cox.
They all become one movie in my mind. It's all been so long,
Well, so Edward Norton starred in the prequel to Silence of the Lambs, and that was Red Dragon, and it takes place all with Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter and all that stuff. But before any of that shit happened, there was another
Dragon.
What's up?
Was that
Ralph Fiennes is the Red Dragon?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Right, but Anthony Hopkins is still Hannibal Lecter in there, and Edward Norton is Will, whatever the fuck his name is, who's seeking counsel with him to solve the case. So it's all based on the book Red Dragon and all that stuff. But before the Anthony Hopkins movies were ever a thing, I think it was Brian De Palma made an adaptation of the Red Dragon book called Manhunter.
It was
great
classic like 80s movie.
Yeah. And it was, I kind of prefer it to the Silence of the Lambs movies.
I remember it as being very good. I like the heck out of it. So, what was that? William J. Peterson? Did I get that right? That was the actor who played the FBI agent.
Yeah, he was in like CSI for like the.
It was To Live and Die in L.A. That was my favorite. That dude. That was a classic. Now I've got to IMDb that. Dang it, Coop.
I mean, I'm also biased. I dig 80s movies more than I like 90s movies. So
Well, then I don't feel bad.
yeah.
Being a movie buff from the 80s myself. That 1986 Manhunter. Come on. Everything's moving very slowly. There we go. Yep, William Peterson.
Okay.
And it was a Michael Mann movie. There you go.
Michael Mann. Okay, that's
I thought it had that. I did. I thought it could go either way, but yes, it was definitely a Michael Mann movie. Had that look about it.
yeah.
Just totally cool. Yes, I try and sit down and get my college age boys to get with me and like let daddy find you a classic movie. Here's like a good movie. If I can get somebody to put their phone down and
It's called Commando.
Just watch the right. No, Arnold, they're all always up for that. Usually about any really good kung fu movie, they're totally down, like the classic, old school traditional kung fu movies, not the wire fu, but like 30
like Legend of the Drunken Master and that shit.
Oh yeah, Drunken Master. Oh yeah, any of the old Jackie Chan stuff like that, I can usually get them to watch. But it's like I'm trying to get them to watch all the old Hammer horror movies with me.
Okay.
Which are like all of my like Brides of Dracula.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Like Christopher Lee is in like half of them as different characters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. I thought you said this was a good movie. It's like, if it doesn't,
I lied.
Right, if it doesn't catch my young men in like the first 5 minutes, I know it because they're like, back on the phone. I'm like, dudes. Yeah, Invasion USA was
USA.
like 1983.
Oh yeah.
Norris.
I still keep telling Mike, because Mike got one of those semi-auto Mac 10 clones. I keep telling him he needs to get a second one and get that double shoulder rig.
I mean,
my God, yeah.
If anybody's going to look good,
The
worst, most useless firearm ever made, the Mac 10.
Which is why he ends up just killing the Roscoff, I think it is, with like twin fucking laws.
But I was going through the Hammer horror movies, and there was one that I remember from, very long time ago that was called 5 Million Years to Earth. Or the US title was Quatermass and the Pit, which might tickle something way back there, but you can't find it anywhere. And some site that horror site that group
Is
that
that supposed to be a playoff of like Alan Quatermain?
No.
Okay.
The Quatermass, Professor Quatermass. There was a series of BBC dramas involving that character, like in the late 50s, early 60s.
Gotcha.
Then some of them turned into movies, but I recommend it very highly if you ever find it. It's they're digging a tunnel in the London Underground, and they come across an ancient alien spacecraft. And it brings in all these great, themes of like a machine that can read the collective unconscious, to remember that like Earth was populated by like insectoids from Mars and stuff. So it's like really whacked out, like great classic, like sci-fi themes with like really good groovy, like basement special effects from the Hammer Studios, like in the 1960s, with that like poorly saturated color film and stuff like that. I enjoyed it immensely. Haven't seen it in probably like 45 years or more like that. My two boys completely lost on them.
Say on that same track, which if you're getting them into 80s movies, The Thing, obviously. But
Oh, they
shortly
love.
behind,
Everybody loves The Thing.
yeah, shortly behind that is the Thing from Another World, which was like the 40s, 50s movie. It's actually a pretty good movie.
James Arness, Marshall Dillon was The Thing.
Yeah.
That's a great one. It's about time to rewatch They Live.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
the
I don't know if it's
finest choreographed fight that has ever existed. So good that like South Park even like, you know, even like mimicked it like scene by scene. You know, I've never seen anything finer in my life. I've still, you know, I enjoy that probably more than any movie I can recall.
Well, because
here.
it's a WWE fight that they just filmed. Like that's
brutal.
why it goes on for like 25 minutes.
Yeah. I thought I'd have to look it up, but I think it is literally like a 9-minute fight in the movie. You know, it's utterly unbelievable. And
it was all because like they had Rowdy Piper on there, and they're just like, hey, we didn't hire a stunt coordinator for this. We figured you knew how to do all this stuff, so just tell us what we need to do. And he's just like,
yep.
Listen, Keith, this is going to be a long day for us.
Right. I loved that guy. He was the best.
I've come here to chew bubble gum and kick ass. I'm all out of bubble gum.
Which apparently he improvised that line for John Carpenter.
Well, I mean, he kind of had to. If you like really look at it, the script is like 4 pages, and it's just like a homeless guy hates capitalism and Reagan. Like that's that's all John Carpenter was worried about. And then,
and the aliens are to blame for all of it.
Yeah, because once he gets the glasses on Keith David, like the movie kind of just falls apart after that. We're just like, I don't even know what we're doing after this. But before that, it's a blast. Like
I love it all the way to I love it all the way to the end. You're on a journey with the character, discovering why, you know, he's living in a transient camp in LA and why the country is falling apart, you know. Excellent writing. It makes me proud to be an American. I wish we could get back to that.
Mean,
and
look,
then of course,
as far as John Carpenter movies go, like I actually like Escape from LA, so I know I'm in the minority.
I was not a fan, but you know,
you can't treat it like okay, this is going to be a high art or equal art sequel to Escape from New York. You just be like, what if we did Escape from New York but hilarious? Like what if we just did that?
You know what? I always got to say, you know, it was a little bit of a money grab, and why not? God bless. More power to John Carpenter. Go over that. Though I have to say, I don't know if you ever saw one of my favorite by him. It just didn't get developed as well as I wish it could have. Was Prince of Darkness.
Yeah, I mean,
I enjoyed it immensely because of the potential of the story, you know, and things like, and of course it had all the greatest, all of his great, you know, it's like John Ford had that stable of actors who were in all the John Ford westerns with John Wayne, you know, it's and stuff like that.
No, it was the reunion tour from
stable of actors that's in Big Trouble in Little China and The Thing and, you know, and Prince of Darkness and They Live and stuff like that.
Halloween, because Donald Pleasance was in that. He was the priest.
Exactly.
And then it had Alice Cooper doing like his stage
right, the homeless guy deal. Yeah, you're on it. That's totally right. Yeah, that's another one that's up on. Yeah, that should be on the list to show the boys to try and keep us all entertained. The other one I do have on it. I gave the boys the choice of that the other night. It was going to be, you know, 5 million Years to Earth or Ghosts of Mars. So, you know, that's
you tried to load the dice on that one. Huh?
Sell it to the boys, you know, when their mother's not around, and say like, it's a good sci-fi movie, and as I recall, there's major boobage in it. So
yeah, I was not a fan.
It's been a long. It's probably been 20
Yeah.
years since I've seen it. But as I recall, for family fun night, you know that it ought to fit the bill.
You know, the fact that they're going on their phones and that stuff, it doesn't bode well with my suggestion. But I would suggest like the old film noir movies, because nothing's gonna like open people up to the idea that like, oh, movie dialogue can actually be like really good and witty, like
Yeah.
anything written in the 40s. You know what I mean? Like,
Some of the older movies they couldn't rely on necessarily special effects or any of that, so the writing had to take up the slack, and it did.
And not even that. It was like they had three hands or two legs and a hand tied behind their backs because of the Hays Code. So if they wanted to write anything like seedy and adult into it, they had to write it in such innuendo that the censors wouldn't pick up on it, but the audience would. It is a masterclass on how to get subtext across.
I tried to get the whole family to watch The Third Man with me the other night, which is like one of my all-time favorite classic movies. It's as much history as it is cinema, in that it's filmed in Vienna during the post-war years. What you're seeing, and I think it was made in 1948, maybe 1949, but you're seeing Vienna at that time in the same, in contemporary to when the story is being told. And every frame is great. The black and white is fantastic. The story is great. The music is iconic.
It's iconic, but it's like sushi. It's an acquired taste. The first time you try and get somebody into it, they're going to be like, "Dad, what the fuck is this?"
Yeah,
like why am I hearing this zither?
It makes me crazy. It's like Anton Karas, the zither. The guy himself had a fascinating backstory. And it's like,
when they were making the movie, they didn't have that in mind until they heard him playing it on the street. And they were just like, we got to put this in the movie. And it became the biggest thing.
It's like that in classic Westerns, trying to get the family to sit down and watch like The Searchers.
Oh, yeah.
How is that hard?
And The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, one of my all-time, Pavlo John is absolutely right. Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, a beautiful story, shot beautifully. John Ford, the cast, unbeatable. Probably in my mind, like from The Searchers and The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, the best John Wayne, there is. And I am the only one watching it, though I've seen it 1,000 times, and there is nothing but faces lit up by cell phones. I know. I don't know what to do.
It's a shame because like Out of the Past is one of the best movies, period. But if you try to get somebody who's just raised up on YouTube and TikTok, like they're going to be checked out before it even gets to the main part.
No, 90 seconds to 3 minutes attention span top, and then done for.
What were you saying?
So I was downrange a few years ago, and somehow in the course of the conversation around the chow hall table, I mentioned Lee Marvin, and nobody else at the table knew who Lee Marvin was, and I was
what?
flabbergasted.
Oh, Lord.
You guys are in your 30s. How the hell do you not know who Lee Marvin was?
Have they not watched Delta Force at the very least?
In this profession, you don't know who Lee Marvin was.
Sad. The professionals.
We had that playing on repeat one day in the CP.
Yeah. Not that, it's like not his best, but my favorite. The story of The Professionals is the greatest.
Yeah.
That is still one of the greatest movies ever. I can watch that anytime.
Have you shown your kids Where Eagles Dare?
I'm positive I have not. With a great movie.
Right, yeah. I'm just thinking like maybe on between like the 80s and the 50s classics, if you got them into like when Clint Eastwood really got going, you know, between the Dirty Harry movies and that stuff. Like,
There right. It's like I tried to get him to watch Dirty Harry the other day. You know, I only got him home when they're, you know, back home because they need to do laundry or they need, you know, they
Right.
need money or something like that. They're all in college and stuff like that. But yeah, Dirty Harry was on HBO and I go, oh, let's watch. You'll totally enjoy this. It's a great movie. You know, it just but the same token, things that were made more contemporary to their time. Like I can remember taking all my boys to go see Fury when it was in theaters. You know, they were a lot younger. You know, when was that? They were like in grade school or some of them in middle school. You
best
know,
job I ever had.
you know, yeah, exactly. But they, you know, they totally dug that experience. But there's just something about just like the quality that comes through with something that isn't, you know, made in this century that like it's just a turn off for them.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is like when we were coming up, and this was long enough that it doesn't matter what generation we're from. When we were coming up, when you were watching a movie, you were watching a movie. Like you didn't have the phone, or if you did have the phone, it was taboo to fucking pull it out in the theater. So it was like when you were watching a movie, you were in the mindset of watching the movie.
True that.
Nowadays, people don't go to movies. They watch YouTube or streaming or whatever. Like everything is at their house. And if they are watching movies, they've got the home theater thing.
It is absolutely an industry in the same way
always
that we've seen the brick and mortar bookstore essentially die. Right. I don't know how any movie theater is still going. When my wife and I are at our home in Newport Beach in California, we have some of the loveliest, most luxurious theaters around. And just for something to do, we'll pick a movie and go see it. The most people that we saw asses and seats for in the last few years was the Reagan biopic.
Really? Okay. Who was in that?
We went in the theater and it was full. We were the youngest people in the theater, of course, but any other, like, I mean, like even we went and saw Dune 2 on a Friday night in Newport Beach, and like there were 4 other people in the theater. You know,
it's Friday night in Newport Beach. They're all over at like the bars and that shit. Or a house party.
But anything, but even like, you know, like I say that people just don't go to even nice theaters. Now, have you seen the trailers for The Return with Ralph Fiennes?
No.
Well,
I don't think so.
Oh, it looks absolutely fantastic. It's King Ulysses' return to Ithaca. So
okay.
It's like several chapters of the Iliad. It looks fantastic. Short story is like I got the boys all ginned up about it, show them the trailer, you know, when they were home on Thanksgiving break. I say, look, it's got a release date of December 6th. You'll be done with finals and be back home. It'll be playing, no doubt, a new release movie. It'll be playing in the local theater. We will go see The Return, sit in a theater like a, you know, regular American family and see what looks like it's going to be a fantastic movie that we can all be excited about.
Right.
They skipped the release, and it is now a direct release on Apple and Prime.
Yeah.
So I'm telling everything that happens like this, the physical movie theater business, I think is I haven't been in I go to movies and I haven't sat in a theater with more than like 10 people since before COVID.
Right.
And I think that industry is absolutely dead on. It's going to be gone in the next few years.
Yeah, well, there has been one exception around here, and this was a couple years ago. But my boy got to see Rio Bravo on the big screen.
Hey,
just down the road here because they were doing a Western a week during the summertime, and there were a lot more than 4 people in that theater.
Amen. Well, you're in a neck of the woods that appreciates Western. No,
that's like around here. That would be like going to see, you know, like a movie about like 1812. Everybody would be like, "Oh yeah, let's show them how we fucking kicked their asses and made the national anthem and that shit." Because I'm 30 miles from Fort McHenry, probably like 20 miles from Fort McHenry. So But to get to your point, though, do you guys know what like the biggest actual profits that movie theaters are making right now? Do you think it's on like which releases do you think are bringing in the most money for movie theaters?
Hmm. 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 So you mean like we're talking like genres, right?
Yeah, even broader than that. And Pete, stop looking it up. I can hear you typing.
Yeah, I know, cheater. I would think the Marvel movies in that genre has to be.
No, actually, fucking people hate those movies now. They've
I
long
hate those
overstayed their
movies.
welcome.
They've been terrible for years.
Yeah.
But,
So
yeah. People have terrible taste. Ugh.
You're thinking too small with genre.
Oh, okay.
The most profitable movies right now are re-releases. It's like movies that have already been like released 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago. And the movie theaters are just like, why don't we just play it again?
Yes,
That's what people are going to.
That's very interesting because when we do go, there's always I can't remember what chain it, but yes, where they 2-3 nights a week in all of the theaters where where they show a lot of classic movies and older movies and stuff like that, and and I always think it'd be a good idea to go see them, but they're also all available on like Amazon. So
right, yeah. Look, if you've got a home theater or something or a big enough fucking TV, like there's no point in going. But if you've got kids who like they've never seen the original Star Wars movies, might as well take them to the movie theaters to see it. Or like because it's like the 20th anniversary of like Return of the King or something like that. Like you can go see that in the theaters and that shit. And those are making the movie theaters a ton of money. What's not making them a ton of money is anything fucking made and released in the past 5 years.
that makes perfect sense.
It's all trash.
Yeah, because they're all trash. But it's why they get put onto the streaming services rather than the movie theaters. Because
Coop, I had a very interesting conversation with out in California. We have a neighbor whose son like directs trailers.
Okay, yeah.
So he's in the business and knows all about this. And that the same period of time we were out there as the writer, during the period of time we had this conversation, like the writers' strike and whoever else was strike was going on. Because me and my wife were taping a Wheel of Fortune at the Sony studios, which, on a good day going up to like Culver City can be, a 45-minute drive. On a bad day, it could be like a 2-hour drive. That's how it is out in that neck of the woods. Long story, to make it longer, I was having a conversation with somebody who knows quite a bit about the business while the writer's strike was going on. And he had a very interesting take, saying one of the things that the writers were striking for is they wanted residuals on streaming.
Yeah.
And while we all know that Netflix and Amazon and whoever keeps those figures, they were not releasing them.
Right.
And writers weren't getting residuals based off of all the streaming views and stuff like that. And this gentleman that I was talking to in the industry said that this was very interesting. They thought that if the writers got what they wanted, that we would see improvement in content, because like Amazon dropping whatever ungodly billions of dollars in Rings of Power, which was completely unwatchable.
I hate it so
all
much.
Of this other woke nonsense, what Disney has done to all the Star Wars properties and how they just destroyed everything. He says what's keeping Netflix and Amazon, things like that, going is stock value rather than profits, of course. Yeah. And that once they actually have to release what the viewership figures are for all these boondoggles they've invested billions of dollars in, that's what will finally affect stock price.
Right.
It's only going to be a decrease in the value of those stocks that's going to force those studios to have to go back to making content that doesn't involve, having to push all the woke nonsense on everybody.
I have to warn you though, right now, I don't think making good content under their streaming model is actually going to save them, because it's the streaming model itself that destroys any sense of profit that a good movie or a good TV show could actually bring. So what is streaming destroyed? It's destroyed movie theaters, right? Like, so the initial release and all that.
Clearly.
What else is it destroyed? It's destroyed the after or the video DVD Blu-ray market, which is where a lot of things that like might not have made a lot of money in the theater end up making a ton of money on the back end and like becoming a big thing. That's gone. Okay, nobody buys DVD. It's like people aren't even releasing a bunch of like the the extra features that you would get on a Blu-ray or a DVD, like the behind the scenes cut scenes, blah blah. You're not getting that because they're not making the DVDs anymore or the Blu-rays. They're just putting it on streaming, right? So that it doesn't pick up on in popularity then. And then if it does, what extra revenue is going into that? It's on the streaming service. You're already subscribed to it. They're not making any extra money off of it.
Except on
they already
Prime.
have your subscription, right?
The reason we all signed up for Prime was, it was like one feed. Now they charge you for everything.
Yeah.
And if they don't, there's commercials in it. They've like already
commercials are coming back. None of the streaming is profitable enough to not have commercials. Ad revenue is how they made their money. We're reinventing cable. We just don't realize it.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. We've gotten rid of satellite or cable, and now we're all paying twice as much to have 10 streaming services that don't have shit on them.
Yeah. And so what you got? So that the streaming service itself, the only way that they actually make money is by bringing in new subscriptions, right? So why would you devote like millions and millions of dollars to create a new property and a new show if you didn't think you were going to make that much money back in new subscriptions, right? So when it was like Netflix and Prime were like the only games in town, right? And it was just like, hey, everything is on Netflix. It's because they were getting a cut of the streaming revenues, like the amount of views per month and all that shit. So the people that were actually making the shows and the TV and the content were making money off of streaming. And Netflix, being the only game in town, it's like, look, we have all this content, sign up with us. That's how they were making their money. Now that everybody has their own streaming service, nobody's making money off of this shit. All these exclusives and that stuff, and even Netflix, which is one of the only profitable streaming services out there, is still suffering from it because they spent about 5 to 10 years dumping billions of dollars into making original content that like 90% of it sucked, and then you had like a couple of standouts that would pay for everything else, like Extraction, like Beasts of No Nation, like Stranger Things, stuff like that. But everything else, what they were making their money off of is licensing Friends, right?
Right. Personally, I think Bezos went to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring because Rings of Power fucked him so bad.
Yeah, probably. I mean,
I think that's what I think. All of the, I was like Charlie Day and had, the pictures and the pieces of string with the pins on it would go in there. It's like Rings of Power led to Bezos, led to Trump, led to like
you don't even need like a network of threads. You just need one. It's just like paid $1 billion for shitty TV show. Nobody likes it. Lost money. We're fucked. Like that's all it.
Well, what I especially enjoyed about it is I try and spend 0% of my time on social media, but just a good scroll through in the morning and, things come into my feed where how many bots there are fighting on the internet, how awesome Rings of Power is.
Yeah, those are all bots.
Which exactly, I go like, that's totally a bot wrote that. I like, this is incredible. How much money you had to put in that just to keep like an honest opinion. A guy going, this is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. You're a racist.
That's the thing. It's like the only people that were talking about it were like a 5 or 6 YouTubers that were getting the clickbait of like, this show fucking sucks, watch us make fun of it, it's hilarious, all that stuff. all the other interactions about the Acolyte or whatever the fuck, you could copy and paste them into the search and show up with like 20,000 different accounts saying the exact same thing. It was like, you guys aren't smart about this.
Yeah. Too funny.
And it still got it to the point where they're not renewing it for a second season. So it's like,
we dumped Disney Plus when they like hiked the prices, and we hadn't watched anything on it in a year because it was so terrible anyway. So the point is, if it's like people like us who would be happy to pay for those streaming services and for good content and things like that, you know, there's got to be millions of people just like us. I just don't see how Disney and Amazon and people like that, how they're just not in the toilet.
So I mean, Amazon, it's because it's a vanity project. Like same with Apple TV. Like Apple TV isn't bringing them any money. Being Apple is bringing them money.
Right.
You know, like Amazon, they're making all their money off of their AWS contracts with the government and the fact that they own the entire internet marketplace, right? Like, I don't have Prime because I want to watch their movies. I have Prime because 2-day shipping. You know what I mean? Like,
man.
So
I'm sure
I missed it. It was actually 2 days.
I mean, it depends on who's fucking striking, but like Amazon and Apple and like the big non-entertainment companies that have a streaming service, it's a vanity thing. It's an extra thing onto them. So, which is why Bezos can spend $1 billion to get the rights to like Lord of the Rings material that he doesn't actually use.
Yes.
And you know, he's still going to be fine. He's still going to be able to fucking build a spaceship and all that shit. Apple, I mean, they're still making your earbuds and all that stuff. Like they're fine. Apple TV is its own thing. They don't care. They could probably buy Disney tomorrow and not even affect the balance sheet. Disney, on the other hand, is an entertainment company. So this shit hurts them. Like Disney Plus is hurting them.
There. I pray to God it hurts somebody there and they pay attention to it. I don't even care if I wish they'd just stop making content. Period.
Yeah.
You know, enough trying to indoctrinate our kids. Enough.
And the fact that Walt was such an ardent anti-communist.
Yeah.
He's
spinning
in his cryogenic chamber.
Right. His head is spinning in the cryogenic chamber.
It's spinning so fast it unfroze itself.
Exactly.
He thawed himself out.
Yeah.
Brothers, I'm gonna have to wind it down. It's past bedtime.
We've been going for almost 2.5 hours.
And see how long we can go when Mike isn't here to slow it down. Don't worry, he's not going to watch this.
Ouch. Well, we've got. Hey, Pete, have you heard anything? When's our short story contribution book coming out? What's it called? I saw Blaine Pardo put up he had a screenshot of what the cover looks like, and I took a picture of it, but I haven't heard anything yet about. I haven't heard anything about.
It is actually out. Let's see.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Show you what I know. Nobody tells me nothing.
Let's see.
I am down on the totem. It's called Apocalypse in Pieces.
Yeah.
That Mark Ridley Mongol Moon collection that we each contributed a short story to.
Came out on the 29th, so about 3 weeks ago.
Shows you what I know, and I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen anything pushed out on social media by Wargate or anything else like it. So,
I mean, that's where I saw it.
Yeah, it was on Twitter, but I think I know Jason hates Facebook.
I hate it all. I
haven't used Facebook in like 6 months, and it's been no regrets. Like Twitter's so much more fun now.
Miss nothing in your life. It's like everybody who's deleted off their phone and all of that has gone on to live a fine, happy life.
No, but I mean, like, I did use Facebook to wish all my like friends from the Marines happy birthday in very offensive fashions that
Very
Usually got me like suspended for a little bit.
nice. Right. Violating community standards.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
It's always,
If you're not violating community standards and wishing your fellow Marines a happy birthday, then you're doing it wrong.
because every one of them, they would always like tell me, be like, bro, I just sent you a screenshot of this, and their whole feed was like, hey, happy birthday, love you, happy birthday, get wrecked, faggot, happy birthday. It's just
That's supposed to be that way. Well, so anyway, well, it's a pleasure that Pete and I got to be on the same project together finally, and have that come out. And I'll get back to writing something else soon. I've taken a little hiatus because I've been busier, like doing life things that I actually enjoy rather than like chained to the computer.
Yeah, that's definitely good. It's good to get away from the computer from time to time.
Yes, it is. Yes, I've had a lot of time this year behind the rifle and working with like really great dudes and just having a bunch of fun all over the country. And I got a little break. I start up again in February. I've got an Army contract to do much the same elsewhere in the country and things like that rolling in. And that's kind of become my priority is my retired guy life is just getting out there and, it's just a gas to be asked to to contribute and do cool stuff with the dudes.
you should work together, like your writing career and your tactical career, by just having like a virtual keyboard, and then like the Mantis X like laser stuff, and so you type just by shooting the keys on the keyboard. It's like, bro, my CQB has gotten real good,
dude.
After that last chapter.
Like I say, you're the innovator. You are the exact innovator that James Burke was writing about in Connections.
Well, I mean, I don't mean to brag, but I am an author advisor. So.
Bringing them together. That's what makes America great. That right there.
Yeah, annoying Pete makes America great.
And on that note,
absolutely.
Thanks for coming out, Doc. Good talking to you again.
Thank you for the invite, Coop, Pete. You guys, Merry Christmas. Best be safe, and I know you're like me. We're just waiting. The real celebration is coming January 20th.
All right, folks. We'll see you all next month.